and they were all pretty hardcore. They were gentlemen. I mean, they weren't assholes. They were nice men, but they were hardcore. They were hard-working men.
Behind that calm, iconic presence, Sam Elliott has been holding back a lot of frustration. Now, at 80 years old, he's finally speaking out and revealing the 7 actors he truly couldn't stand. Some rubbed him the wrong way on set. Others disrespected the craft of acting. And a few? Sam says they simply had no business being in a Western. From walking off set mid-production to turning down roles just to avoid certain names, Elliott is no longer staying silent. In this video, we're breaking down the top 6 actors Sam Elliott hated the most, and why. Let's get started. Kevin Costner. He plays a rancher like it's dress-up, like he's cosplaying something he doesn't truly understand. That wasn't a fan comment on Reddit. That was Sam Elliott, the grizzled titan of Western cinema, speaking about none other than Kevin Costner, Hollywood's modern-day cowboy and the face of Yellowstone. For decades, Sam Elliott has been a symbol of old-school authenticity. Not just because of his unmistakable gravelly voice or his steel-eyed stare, but because of how he lived before the cameras ever rolled. He wasn't just acting the cowboy, he was one. Raised in the American West, weathered by ranch life, built from grit, silence, and dusty roads. So when Kevin Costner entered the Western genre with Wyatt Earp in the 1990s and later dominated TV screens as John Dutton in Yellowstone, Sam Elliott wasn't impressed. Elliott never directly attacked Costner in the press. He didn't need to. His opinions seeped through in quiet comments and firm rejections. To him, Costner was Hollywood's version of a cowboy, one close friend recalled. Clean boots, polished lines, perfect lighting, no calluses, no dirt under the nails. While Yellowstone exploded into a ratings juggernaut, drawing millions with its drama, gunfights, and sprawling vistas, Elliott turned down a cameo offer. According to one producer, his response was short and cold. Soap opera with a cowboy hat. That decision wasn't just about a script, it was a statement. To Sam Elliott, Westerns aren't entertainment. They're a moral code. They're supposed to be about honor, restraint, silence, and grit, not primetime melodrama and designer denim. It's too much like effing Dallas for me, Elliott later told Marc Maron during a podcast interview, doubling down on his distaste. I don't watch Yellowstone. I love Kevin Costner. There are good people in that cast, but it's just not for me. But the quiet jabs were unmistakable. While the feud never became an all-out war in the media, those who worked on projects involving both men said you could feel the frost in the air when they shared a room. They never yelled, one longtime producer claimed, but the chill between them could freeze a desert. Elliott's problem wasn't with Costner the man. It was with Costner as a symbol of a polished, big-budget version of the West that had lost touch with the dirt, sweat, and silence Sam believed in. He once reportedly said, "You could smell the saddle in John Wayne's voice. I don't smell anything in Costner's." To Elliott, Costner's brand of Western was cinematic, curated, and hollow. Costner, for his part, never fired back. But when asked in a 2022 interview with Vanity Fair whether he felt pressure living up to Western icons, his response felt like a thinly veiled reply. "I didn't get into this to impress other actors. I care about telling the story right. And if someone thinks I'm too clean to ride a horse, so be it. I've buried cattle with my bare hands. I've done the work." He added, "I respect the greats. But the West isn't owned by one generation. It evolves, and it should." The statement echoed Kevin's often defended position, that his portrayal in Yellowstone wasn't meant to replicate the past, but reimagine it. Still, insiders say Costner felt stung by Elliott's comments, especially since he'd reportedly suggested Elliott for a guest role in 1883. But wait. Didn't Sam star in Yellowstone's prequel, 1883? Yes. And that's where things get even more complicated. Sam Elliott played the lead in 1883, the gritty prequel to Yellowstone. The irony wasn't lost on fans or the press. How could he criticize Yellowstone while headlining a project directly connected to it? When confronted, Elliott clarified, 1883 was different. That was about pain, loss, the real frontier. Yellowstone is about business, land fights, power. It's a soap opera. To him, 1883 was art. Yellowstone was entertainment. And he refused to conflate the two. Still, critics accused Elliott of hypocrisy. One article in The Hollywood Reporter bluntly asked, "Is Sam Elliott full of tea?" Elliott didn't respond. Is the feud over? Not exactly. But it's quiet now. Both men continue to work. Elliott, now 80, rarely gives interviews, but when he does, the subject of Yellowstone always seems to poke the fire. Costner, amid Yellowstone's behind-the-scenes chaos and his own directorial ambitions, seems more focused on legacy than grudges. Benedict Cumberbatch. In 2021, Hollywood was stunned when Sam Elliott, the gravel-voiced legend of Western cinema, launched a scathing attack, not just on a film, but on a fellow actor, Benedict Cumberbatch. It wasn't subtle, it wasn't polite. It was classic Sam Elliott, raw, unfiltered, and coming from a place he's defended his whole life. Authenticity. What the hell does this Brit know about the American West? That one line, dropped casually on Mark Maron's WTF podcast, lit a fire across the film industry. The target of Elliott's fury was The Power of the Dog, Jane Campion's Oscar-winning psychological Western. The film, praised for its subversion of traditional masculinity and its nuanced performances, didn't sit well with Elliott. "They're all running around in chaps and no shirts," he scoffed. "There are all these allusions to homosexuality throughout the F. King movie. That's what all these F. King cowboys in that movie looked like Chippendales dancers." And when it came to Cumberbatch, the British actor who played tortured rancher Phil Burbank, Elliott didn't hold back. "He gave a prissy portrayal of a Western rancher," he said, his tone thick with disapproval. "I mean, come on. A British guy playing a Montana cowboy in 1925? Get out of here." To Elliott, it wasn't just bad casting. It was an offense against something sacred. He viewed The Power of the Dog as a pretentious, hollow interpretation of a life he'd lived, and Cumberbatch as a tourist in cowboy boots. Elliott's outrage wasn't about awards or box office numbers. It was about the Western, not just a genre, but a code of ethics, a way of life built on silence, strength, and struggle. He believed The Power of the Dog stripped the Western of its soul, romanticizing trauma while dressing it in art house aesthetics. In his eyes, it turned cowboys into caricatures. "The West isn't about trendiness. It's about truth," Elliott said. This movie didn't understand that, and it sure as hell didn't respect it. The internet exploded. Social media accused Elliott of gatekeeping the genre. Critics said he was out of touch, clinging to outdated definitions of masculinity. Many defended The Power of the Dog as a necessary evolution of the Western, with one variety critic writing, "Elliott is trying to preserve a version of the West that never truly existed. It's myth, not history, and Campion's film challenges that myth." But Elliott didn't flinch. He offered no apology, no backpedaling. He was a cowboy, after all. And in his mind, he'd already taken 10 paces and fired. Benedict Cumberbatch didn't respond right away, but when he finally addressed the remarks at a BAFTA film session, the emotion was unmistakable. "Someone really took offense to the West being portrayed in this way," he said carefully. "I'm trying very hard not to say anything about a very odd reaction, but it's unfair to get into it fully, especially when I've only read the comments secondhand." Cumberbatch, clearly shaken, defended the film's deeper purpose. If we are to understand what poisons the well in men, what creates toxic masculinity, we need to look under the hood of characters like Phil Burbank. He didn't attack Elliott directly. He didn't match the insult with insult. Instead, he stood by the film and by his performance. These people still exist. The pain, the repression, the confusion, it's real. And if we don't talk about it, it repeats. The tension between them never turned into a media war, but insiders say the damage was done. According to a Paramount executive, Cumberbatch was deeply stung. He trained hard, stayed in character, learned the craft. He gave everything. And to be dismissed like that, especially by someone like Sam Elliott, cut deep. Elliott has remained quiet since the controversy, refusing to clarify or retract. Cumberbatch, meanwhile, has moved on, but reportedly declined a potential Western script in 2023, citing concerns over genre politics. For decades, Sam Elliott has been Hollywood's living embodiment of restraint, the voice of quiet storms, the kind of actor who could say more with a single glance than most could with a page of dialogue. To him, less is not just more, it's everything. He prizes nuance, slow burn, and grounded emotion. He believes acting at its finest is an inward craft, not a circus act. So when Nicolas Cage burst into the spotlight with his now famous blend of operatic chaos, flailing arms, sudden screaming, wide-eyed mania, Elliott didn't see a visionary. He saw a vandal. "He's more firework than flame," Sam reportedly told a close friend. "Big bang, no heat." To Elliott, Cage represented everything wrong with modern acting. Loud, self-indulgent, attention-seeking. Not performance, but spectacle. Not presence, but performance addiction. The only time the two legends ever worked together was in 2007's Ghost Rider. On paper, it was a dream. The elder statesman of Western grit meets the eccentric rock star of cult cinema. But on set, it was ice cold. Insiders say the tension was unspoken but thick. While Sam remained polite and professional, he kept his distance. "There was no warmth," said one crew member. "Sam showed up, did his work with class, but the moment cut was called, he was gone. No mingling, no bonding, especially not with Cage." Years later, Elliott spoke in vague but unmistakable terms during an interview. "Some actors, they walk onto the set like it's their personal stage play. Everything has to be about them. They don't serve the scene. They steal it." He didn't mention Cage by name. He didn't need to. This wasn't personal beef. There were no blow-ups, no shouting matches, but it was something deeper, a fundamental difference in how each man understood the soul of acting. Where Elliott believed in stillness and subtlety, Cage believed in extremity and explosion. "I use the method of nouveau shamanic acting," Cage once told the New York Times. "You have to go beyond naturalism. You have to risk looking ridiculous to find something divine." To that, Elliott might as well have rolled his eyes behind his signature mustache. To him, acting wasn't about being divine. It was about being real. Though Nicolas Cage never publicly acknowledged a feud, he knew. According to a former Ghost Rider publicist, Cage once said privately, "Sam Elliott's a legend, but I think he sees me as some kind of Hollywood clown. That's okay. I'm not here to impress cowboys. I'm here to find the edge." He tried to stay diplomatic in interviews, often calling Sam stoic or iconic, but it was clear the respect wasn't mutual. And when asked if he'd ever work with Elliott again, Cage simply said, "I think we live on different planets, man." The rift was never explosive enough to grab headlines, but it never healed either. There was no apology, no quiet reconciliation, no second collaboration. The two men went their separate ways, one riding out into the sunset of tradition, the other blazing through a kaleidoscope of chaos. Sam Elliott still doesn't speak Cage's name, but in interviews, his disdain for flamboyant acting styles continues to surface like smoke from an old fire. Some actors act for the mirror, others act for the story. You know who's who the second they walk on screen. And Cage. He's continued pushing boundaries, some brilliant, some bizarre, but he's never adjusted for the critics or the cowboys. To the public eye, the ranch looked like an unlikely success, pairing the gravel-voiced Western icon Sam Elliott with millennial funny man and tech investor Ashton Kutcher. On screen, their chemistry worked. But behind the scenes, Sam Elliott was gritting his teeth. Because to Elliott, Kutcher wasn't just a co-star. He was a symbol of everything wrong with modern Hollywood. "He's a decent guy," Sam was overheard saying on set, "but no real actor." That one line said it all. To Sam Elliott, acting is sacred. It's not about memes, headlines, or venture capital. It's about truth, earned, lived, and delivered with integrity. Every role must come from someplace raw, someplace real. And that's where the friction started. When Ashton Kutcher burst onto the scene in that 70s show and coasted into stardom with romantic comedies and tech entrepreneurship, Sam didn't see ambition. He saw dilution. To Elliott, Kutcher represented a dangerous evolution, a performer molded by fame, not the craft. Still, when the ranch brought them together in 2016, Elliott didn't object. He's a professional. He showed up, hit his marks, and did the work. But those on set say the tension was unmistakable. "He wasn't hostile," said one crew member. "He was disappointed. It was like watching a cowboy show up to a gunfight and realizing the other guy brought a selfie stick." Kutcher, ever the diplomat, gushed publicly about working with Sam, calling him a mentor and a legend. But Elliott didn't return the warmth. Not in interviews, not in actions, not even privately. "He acts like a guy who learned acting from YouTube," Elliott reportedly said to a close friend. The comment spread quietly through industry circles, and it stung. Because unlike some feuds born from ego or bad blood, this wasn't personal for Elliott, it was philosophical. It was about a standard, a code, and to him, Kutcher didn't meet it. Elliott came up the hard way, bit roles, thankless parts, years of discipline. To him, Kutcher's trajectory, sitcom celebrity to movie star to tech mogul, felt like a shortcut. And worse, it felt hollow. It wasn't Kutcher's fame that rubbed Elliott wrong. It was the way he used it. Elliott believed that the soul of acting had been hijacked by branding, social media, and charisma without weight. "These days, you don't need to be the part. You just need people to click on it," Elliott once said, thinly veiled. Kutcher never addressed Elliott's rumored disdain directly, but in later interviews, he seemed aware of the divide. "Sam's from a different generation," Kutcher told Esquire. "I respect him. I learned a lot just watching him work. We're different kinds of actors. That's not a bad thing." Diplomatic? Yes, but the unspoken distance remained. Even fans began to notice a coldness in later seasons of The Ranch. Their characters grew distant, less playful, more formal. Some chalked it up to writing. Others knew better. So, did the feud ever end? Not exactly. Elliott has never gone public with a direct criticism of Kutcher. He never needed to. His silences spoke volumes. His glances said everything. And Kutcher, for his part, has stayed gracious, perhaps wisely choosing not to engage further. Today, their paths have diverged. The Ranch ended in 2020. Elliott returned to the kind of work that speaks to his soul, slow-burning westerns and character-driven films. Kutcher, meanwhile, has continued to pivot from acting to activism to investing. At 80, Sam Elliott isn't out there chasing the spotlight. He's chasing what feels real. And for him, that means not every actor or every film deserves to be put on a pedestal. To Sam, acting has always been about truth, tradition, and staying grounded. Even if it means standing apart from the crowd, he's perfectly okay with that. Because in an industry full of noise and flash, Sam Elliott is still riding tall as one of the last true cowboys.